We're also being joined by Ralph Schonman from Berkeley. He's the author of The Hidden History of Zionism. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Schonman. First of all, how do you explain the sudden burst of anti-Israeli sentiments on the streets of Cairo?
Well, the masses of people associate the attacks by the Israeli state, which killed Egyptian soldiers and police recently, as not only a provocation but an expression of the collaboration with the Israeli state by the military under Mubarak for 4 decades. And it enrages people as an affront to their self-determination and to their solidarity with the Palestinian people. And it's important to understand that thousands of people were involved in this protest, and they cheered the demolition of the wall, and they chanted for the ouster of the Israeli ambassador. Thousands of Egyptians took to the streets around this question. They converged on Tahrir Square, and they combined their call for breaking relations with Israel and the removal of the Israeli ambassador with demands, as CNN reports, for correcting the path of the revolution. And they specified, according to CNN, the following demands: the removal of ruling party members from banks, schools, universities, and government institutions. The protests demand the abolishment of the military tribunals, the establishment of minimum wages and maximum wages for officials, permission for Egyptians to vote abroad, vote in coming elections, the demand for the announcement of dates for these elections, a call for the removal of former ruling party members from the banks, schools, universities, and government institutions. This expression of generalized rage at the collaboration of the military that rules Egypt today with the Israelis and with the suppression of the Egyptian masses is concretizing around this struggle unfolding now, as you described it so well, in the wall surrounding the Israeli embassy. It symbolizes everything that the Egyptian people are rising up against.
Right, but Mr. Schonman, is this going to transpire into anything concrete and significant? Is the ruling council going to heed the demands of the people here and actually review its deal with the with the Israeli government?
The answer to that question is that the ruling order is not significantly different from what it was during the era of Mubarak, and that the people increasingly understand the fact that the revolutionary demands that they have expressed will not and cannot be implemented with the old guard military defending the same oligarchy that has controlled the economic and political life of Egypt against the will of the people over this long period of time. The struggle will advance. It is concretizing around economic demands, which include the call for strikes and for workers to form organizations that will take control of the economy. It's important to understand that both the BBC and the CNN reports about this protest around the Israeli embassy and the wall and the demands for the removal of the ambassador are joined to social and economic demands that challenge the continued rule of this oligarchy and the Egyptian military that sustains their control.
Right, so what do you see happening right now? We do know that the Israeli ambassador to Cairo is waiting for a plane to leave Egypt. What kind of a reaction do you expect coming from the Israeli side to what's been going on in Cairo right now?
I expect the Israelis and the United States to put pressure on the military to crack down on the population, to renew arbitrary arrests and disappearances and the repression that has characterized their rule over these 4 decades. That's the only language which the Zionist state and the imperial masters understand, and it's the role that the Egyptian military and oligarchy has played as part of what we call a country-selling regime. There is no mechanism of reconciliation. There are diametrically opposed objectives that concern social justice and the aspirations of the people and their empowerment to control the fate of their country. Those things have to be resolved by removal of those who stand in the way of self-determination, sovereignty, and the aspiration of the people not only of Egypt but of the region at large.
All right, this will be resolved only if the momentum here is kept on. We've already gotten reports of one protester who has died because of suffocation due to tear gas. We've already heard gunshots near the area of the Israeli embassy in Cairo. Do you think that the military council might just suppress this burst of anti-Israeli sentiment?
Well, they are continually engaging in forms of repression. People are being disappeared. The old secret police are now being unleashed across Egypt, not only in Cairo, but in Suez and Alexandria and in other locations. It is a struggle between the aspirations of the mass of the people, as you indicated, and the entrenched oligarchy, which relies upon the military to maintain the status quo. Israel's defense minister said he ordered a joint inquiry to be held together with the Egyptian army. What an extraordinary display of arrogance that the defense minister of the Zionist state is ordering an inquiry to be held in conjunction with the Egyptian army. That will only confirm what the protesters have been declaring, that the military is an adjunct of the Israeli state and a servant of imperialism and does not reflect the interests of Egypt or the aspirations of its population.
All right. And now, U.S. President Barack Obama on Friday called on Egypt to protect Israel's embassy from the demonstrators in Cairo. He expressed great concern over the incident. The U.S. did come out in support of the revolution, but looking at the turn it's taking now, do you see more U.S. support coming towards for the protesters on the streets of Cairo?
The United States rulers have never supported the revolutionary aspirations of the Egyptian people. They used every mechanism and every means of repression and of pressure to maintain Mubarak in office. When he was removed, they attempted to put Suleiman in his place, who had been in conjunction with the Israeli Mossad over a space of 4 decades and in charge of the torture apparatus. When he was removed, they maintained the oligarchy of Tantawi, the Egyptian officer class that had been the support of Mubarak for the entire period of time in question. The U.S. role is to maintain the old order by one means or another and to lay claim to the aspirations of the people, even as they are organized to subject the people to more repression and to crush their resistance. That's the only role imperialism can play, and these issues become ever more clear with passing days.
Right, now, the path that the ruling military council takes over here with regards to these anti-Israel protests, it sort of reflects on how successful the revolution has been overall in dismantling the remnants of Hosni Mubarak's regime. Now, considering that it does not listen to the popular demand on the streets of Cairo, where is this headed, considering that presidential and parliamentary elections are scheduled for the end of 2011?
Well, we keep in mind that, as we've often discussed on Press TV, in Egypt, something like a fraction of a percent control the entire economic life of the country. The great mass of the people are living on less than $2 a day. Those realities have not altered with the removal of Mubarak, and the military's role is to maintain that oligarchical rule, and the pro-imperialist and collaborationist politics with the Zionist state that are the characteristic of the Egyptian military's politics today will not be altered without their removal, and the population is increasingly aware of this, angered by the fact that the status quo has not been fundamentally changed, that there's been a cosmetic change with Mubarak's removal, but the structure of power has not been altered, and with every day that passes, the military resorts to more repression as the anger of the population concretizes itself in mobilizations of this kind. and particularly because the Israeli embassy and the Zionist state are a lightning rod for resistance, given the nature of Zionism and its long-standing subjugation of the Arab masses and crushing of the aspirations of the Palestinian people. The role of the military in maintaining that status quo, the role of Obama and of American rulers in supporting the military and insisting upon the military maintaining that status quo will further radicalize the Egyptian people and push them and embolden them to look for means of struggle, including those of a general strike and other forms of resistance, which will also begin to appeal to the rank-and-file soldiers who are as exploited and hungry as their brothers and sisters who they're being ordered to repress.
Well, speaking of which, what does this signify for the Palestinians? We do know that the Palestinian bid for statehood recognition in the UN is coming up shortly. Also, Gaza remains under siege both from the Israeli side and the Egyptian side. So what does this mean for the Palestinians seeing the Israeli embassy being attacked by protesters in Egypt?
It has enormous significance for the Palestinian people. It has enormous significance for the 1 million people who have been mobilizing amongst the settler population itself against the policies of the Zionist state. The Egyptian uprising has inspired, emboldened, and given license and encouragement to struggle that would never before have shown itself within the Israeli state. The Palestinian people will be armed in their unwillingness to accept the politics of the Palestinian Authority, which are basically run by the CIA, financed by the Israeli state. The demand for the recognition of a little statelet in a corner of the West Bank on the part of the United Nations will do nothing to advance the aspirations of the Palestinian people. Those cannot be separated from a struggle for the de-Zionization of the state and for a Palestinian society in which rights do not depend on religious affiliation or ethnic origin, and which Zionism is a thing of the past. Zionism is like the apartheid state of South Africa. You cannot reconcile the apartheid state of South Africa with the aspirations of the South African masses, and the role of the South African state was to support every reactionary and repressive and imperial regime in the continent. That is the role of the Zionist state. That's the role of the Egyptian military. These are class questions. They're questions that have to be resolved through struggle. No more could the Shah be tolerated in Iran than can Mubarak and the military oligarchy be tolerated in Egypt. It's the same kind of issue. The struggle of the population must be concretized in the removal of this oligarchy from power and in the transformation of these nations from subject nations under imperial control and Israeli domination to sovereign states that are truly representing the needs and aspirations of their populations.
And where do you see this headed, considering within the context of the peace deal between Israel and Egypt, specifically the way Israel chooses to respond, and the ruling junta, as you said, is not really looking out for the interest of its people?
Well, of course, everybody in Egypt is well aware that this so-called peace deal between the Egyptian hierarchy and the Zionist state is not peace but capitulation, not peace but pacification, not recognition of the aspirations of the Palestinian people, but lending the power of the Egyptian state to the stability and the endurance of the Zionist apparatus in Israel. So this peace treaty is everything but peace. It is, in fact, the opposite of peace because it guarantees permanent war, because imperialism and Zionism are in perpetual conflict and attempts to subjugate their surrounding neighbors. The people are not willing to accept a peace treaty that puts Egypt under the direction of the Mossad and the Egyptian people under the dictate of imperialism, as well as the Zionist military plans of the future. No, there is no peace agreement that is in any way recognizable as representing peace for the people concerned. It represents, on the contrary, the stabilization of their oppression, and that is the opposite of peace. Peace has to do with justice. Peace has to do with the legitimate aspirations being acknowledged for people, with their rights honored, with their popular control represented by the state institutions that they command. Nothing short of that will allow peace in the region. There will only be permanent war as long as Zionism and the subject regimes of imperialism maintain their arbitrary control.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm afraid we have run out of time. That was author of The Hidden History of Zionism, Ralph Shaunman, joining us from Berkeley. Mr. Shaunman, many thanks indeed for your insight here on Press.